You felt it in the quiet aftermath, when her eyes lingered not on who you were, but on who you could become if you turned away. You've seen it, that strange shimmer in her expression, not when you gave, but when you withheld. It was never the closeness that drew her in, was it? It was the distance, the threat of absence, the risk of loss. There's a cold, holy silence around a man who could disappear, not because he plays a game, but because he truly could. And you have never forgotten the way her voice trembled the first time you almost walked away, not from cruelty, but from clarity. You didn't belong to her story. You were the silence at the edge of her script, the unnamed figure in the background of her dream. But she stared at you as if you held the key to something sacred she never dared ask for. And deep down, you've wondered, was it love, or worship, or fear? Or are those three things never truly separate? Somewhere inside you, something already knows. Not in words, but in the ache that comes whenever you try to stay. You have been watched your entire life, but never seen. The gaze of others clings to your skin like a fog, warm, expectant, hungry, but never reaches your soul. They only love your outline. The moment you turn toward them, the moment you speak, explain, offer your truths, something dies in their eyes. It is not you they wanted, it was your mystery. And the cruelest truth of all is this: the more sincere you become, the less they desire you. Because desire does not feed on closeness, it feeds on the echo of absence. You mistake affection for recognition, but they were only loving their reflection in your distance. You have tried to be understood. You have knelt before intimacy, thinking it was sacred. You bled your stories onto her lap and begged her to cradle them like relics. But she did not listen, not really. She held the sound, not the meaning. Because once you made yourself visible, you became finite. And the finite can never hold the eternal flame of longing. You revealed your soul like a man stepping naked into the light, believing that love was built on openness. But she had only ever loved the silhouette of your retreating shadow. And so you began to learn in pieces, in sighs, in betrayals, that the more you give, the less you are wanted. Not because women are cruel, but because they are bound by a deeper hunger, one they do not name, one they often do not know. They crave the man who can disappear because his absence reveals a door in themselves they cannot open. A man who can walk away is not bound by their gravity. He is not orbiting their approval. He is a storm passing through their sky, and no prayer can make him stay longer than his own truth allows. You remember the first time you didn't answer her message, how her warmth swelled, how her softness sharpened. She became attentive, present, poetic, not because she missed you, but because she feared that you were no longer orbiting her sun. And in that fear, she remembered the silence she had tried to escape her entire life, the silence of not being chosen. And you, by not needing her, became the arbiter of her worth, the terrible high priest of her mirror. You think this is power, you think this is seduction, but it is exile in disguise. For the man who can walk away is not free because he is wanted. He is free because he has accepted his aloneness. And you have not yet done that. You are playing at detachment. You are pretending to be the wanderer, but still waiting to be chased. You hold the door open not to leave, but to be followed. You hope your distance will summon love, but love born of fear is only idolatry with perfume. You must ask yourself in the dark, without an audience can you vanish, without bitterness? Can you walk away and still bless the ground behind you? Or are you holding your silence like a weapon? Because many men wear detachment like a mask, hoping it will earn them reverence. But reverence is not love. It is projection, a mirror that reflects only what the other fears to become. And you If you continue to chase desire by withholding, will become a ghost of yourself. Present only in absence, desired only in retreat. Do you remember her eyes the first time you looked through her instead of at her, that trembling moment when she realized you did not need her to complete the sentence? You were no longer writing toward her approval. You had stepped off the stage, you had rejected the applause, and in that moment, she stared at you as if you had become dangerous, not cruel, not cold, but free. And freedom, to the one who still clings, is unbearable. You think love is earned by presence, but love, the kind that devours and sanctifies, is summoned by the quiet dignity of leaving, not as punishment, not as manipulation, but as testament. The man who stays too long becomes a ghost of her desire. The man who lingers becomes the mirror she smashes when she no longer sees a mystery. She will say you changed. She will say you stopped caring. But it is not your change she mourns. It is the disappearance of the ache she worshipped when you stood at the edge of goodbye. And you must learn to accept this contradiction. That, to be loved deeply, you must sometimes be out of reach. That, to be respected, you must sometimes let her misunderstand you. That your clarity may feel like cruelty and your silence like betrayal. But there is a sacred space between devotion and departure, and only a man who has met himself in that silence can remain whole. You were not made to be her savior. You were not made to be her mirror. You were made to carry a silence that does not tremble before being forgotten. You must walk, not because she failed you, but because your soul knows the weight of pretending to belong. You must walk, not to teach her a lesson, but because your staying would only betray what is most alive in you. Not every love is meant to be completed. Some are meant to awaken the part of you that knows how to leave with reverence. She will desire you when you are no longer seeking to be desired. She will follow you when your path no longer bends toward her validation. And in that cruel, inverted light, you will see the truth. It was never you she wanted. It was the part of you that refused to kneel, the part of you that belongs to the mountain, not the hearth. The part of you that blesses the wind and does not curse the door when it closes. So you must choose. Will you stay and decay into something lovable, or will you walk and become something real? There is no compromise. The mirror only reflects what you refuse to become. And if you linger too long, her desire will turn to dissection, her love will turn to demand, and you will become a man who is needed, not known. Do not be proud of being wanted. Even parasites want the warm. Be proud of being untouched by need. Be proud of the silence you carry that makes her forget her name. Be proud of the ache she feels when she cannot possess you, not because you are cruel, but because you belong elsewhere to the deeper, lonelier truth. She does not love you. She loves what vanishes when you speak. So vanish. But do it without rage. Do it without noise. Be the mirror that refuses to reflect. Let her stare until she sees herself. And then walk away. There is a moment not spoken, not seen when you feel the tremor of her needing you. It is not love. It is a kind of silent plea, stitched into glances, softened in her voice, hidden in the way she pretends not to wait. And you feel it, that invisible thread pulling you back. You think maybe if I stay just a little longer, something sacred will appear. Maybe if I am patient enough, she will finally see me, not the mask, not the role, but the core. And so you stay, not because you believe, but because you want to believe. And that is the beginning of your fall. You do not collapse all at once. You rot in increments. You begin to explain yourself. You begin to offer reasons, soften your edges, make your presence easier to swallow. You dim your solitude into something manageable. You teach her how to handle you, and in doing so, you teach her how to forget you. You thought love was nurtured by closeness, but now you are beginning to see some intimacies destroy what they claim to cherish. Some desires feed only on the chase, and the moment you surrender, the altar turns to ash. You tell yourself you are being kind. You tell yourself that leaving would hurt her, that staying is strength. But there is a deeper fear you refuse to name, the fear of your own aloneness. You pretend you are staying for her, but in truth, you are staying because you do not trust the silence that comes after departure. You are addicted to the echo of her need. You are afraid that if no one depends on your presence, you might disappear entirely. But this fear does not make you noble. It makes you a prisoner with polished chains. There is a kind of death in this compromise, not dramatic, not bloody, a quiet corrosion. You become dependable, kind, attentive. She begins to speak over you, to mold you, to decorate you with her desires. And all the while, you are vanishing. Your spine softens, your gaze lowers. The flame you carried when you first met her begins to flicker beneath the weight of your own denial. She does not notice. She does not mean harm. But her love feeds on your gradual descent into comfort. And comfort, for a man who once stood at the edge of freedom, is a form of slow suicide. You try to rebel. You bring silence back into the room. You disappear for a day. You say no. She startles. She retreats. For a moment, the tension returns, and with it, her longing. But now it feels artificial, performed, as if both of you are imitating the early days. You begin to see it clearly. She loved the man who did not stay. And now that you have stayed, she no longer knows how to love you. She cannot say this. She still holds your hand. She still says your name, but her desire is hollow, automatic, like a prayer spoken without belief. You lie awake beside her and feel the unbearable weight of being needed, but not worshipped. She no longer sees you as something mysterious. You are now a function, a stability, a name in her calendar, a pattern she can predict. And though she thanks you for your devotion, she secretly resents you for killing the ache. She wanted your closeness, but not your collapse. She wanted your heart, but only as a locked room, and you gave her the key, hoping she would knock forever. But no one knocks on an open door. You cannot reclaim the edge, not now, not honestly. You cannot unstay. You cannot resurrect the silence that once made her pulse race. You can pretend, of course. You can grow cold, withdraw, reassert your distance. But she will smell the performance. She will see through the costume. And worse, you will feel like a fraud. Because the man who leaves must do so out of truth, not calculation. Otherwise, he is just another child playing at mystery. You stayed too long. You crossed the invisible line. And now, everything you were is buried beneath the man you became for her comfort. There is a shame that comes with this recognition, a quiet, aching shame. You remember who you were silent, strange, unafraid to disappear. And now, you are always available, always pleasing, always ready to be reshaped. You wanted to be loved without being conquered. But you gave her the map. You showed her where to press, where to flatter, where to wound. And though she never meant to destroy you, she was merely following the script you both pretended wasn't written. You tell yourself you are still free. You still have choices. But look at yourself. You are waiting for her reactions. You measure your words to keep the peace. You edit your truth to avoid her disappointment. This is not love. This is entrapment wrapped in affection. You are not staying because of connection. You are staying because you are afraid of being alone with the version of yourself that dares to leave. And that is the most dangerous temptation. To mistake fear for love. To mistake dependency for devotion. She feels it too. She may not say it. She may not understand it. But something in her soul recoils every time you soften. Every time you adjust your essence to please her, she misses the man who wasn't afraid to be misunderstood. The man who did not beg to be accepted. The man whose silence made her question her worth. And though she says she loves you more now, you can feel the hollowness in her kiss. She is loving a version of you she helped create, but it is not the version she truly longed for. You must face the brutal truth the longer you stay out of fear. The more you poison the love you were trying to protect. The more you mold yourself into what she desires, the more you kill what made her desire you. There is no redemption in this path, only a slow forgetting of who you were before you made her the center of your decisions. You cannot save this by staying longer. You cannot resurrect mystery from within obedience. You can only leave or remain and accept your descent into quiet resentment. You stand at the edge again, but this time, the decision is harder. Not because of her, but because of what you have already lost in yourself. To walk now would be to admit you betrayed your own silence. To walk now would be to acknowledge that you used her need to avoid your own despair. You did not stay out of love. You stayed because you were afraid that the man who leaves might never be held again. But perhaps that is the point. Perhaps to be whole, you must risk never being held. You stare at her sleeping form and feel the pull. The soft, terrifying pull of staying one more day, one more night, just a little longer. But you know, you have always known. The longer you stay, the more you lie. And the more you lie, the more she believes in a man who no longer exists. You are not protecting her. You are protecting the illusion that love can survive in captivity. There is no courage in this kind of loyalty, only delay, only a man praying that time will grant him the clarity he already feels in his bones. But time does not save, time reveals. And it has revealed you. As a man who once stood in silence and now whispers apologies in a language that was never yours. So choose, not with your words, not with your explanations, but with your feet. The temptation to stay will never leave. It will disguise itself as kindness, duty, sacrifice, but it is only the fear of the echo that follows after the door closes. And until you walk, that echo will never become a voice. You used to believe she held you, that her hands were the shape of safety, that her voice carved your worth. You thought her affection was a kind of gravity, inescapable, divine, necessary. But now you see it. The door was never locked. You weren't imprisoned. You were kneeling. You chose the weight. You painted the bars around yourself. And every time she called it love, you believed her. Because it was easier than admitting your own fear that you are not lovable unless you are needed. But love, the kind that awakens rather than devours, is never born from need. It is born from solitude that has made peace with silence. She never trapped you. She only smiled when you stepped into the cage yourself. And what was she to do? You came to her holding the key in one hand and your hunger in the other. You said you wanted truth, but you meant comfort. You said you wanted to be seen, but you meant adored. And now you stand in a room whose walls you built, whispering that she won't let you go. But look closer, there is no lock, no chain, only your reflection in her eyes, waiting for you to recognize yourself. You fear the silence outside this room. You call it loneliness. You call it loss. But that's not what you fear. You fear irrelevance. You fear walking out and hearing nothing behind you, no footsteps, no weeping, no name called out into the dusk. You want to be chased, but to be chased is still to be captured, and the man who walks away for truth must not look back to see if she follows. Otherwise, he is not walking away. He is leading her. He is still performing, still seeking witness, still asking to be made real by the echo of someone else's longing. The door stands open, but you hesitate, because walking out would mean facing the question that has stalked you since boyhood. Who are you when no one is watching? Not the man in her eyes, not the one in your father's shadow, not the lover made out of memory, but you, stripped of context, stripped of script. Can you bear that silence? Can you hold your own gaze when it no longer serves a function? She would have loved you forever had you remained slightly out of reach. You could have danced there, endlessly close enough to touch, far enough to worship. But you crossed over. You came too close. You offered her the raw, trembling truth that you ache, that you doubt, that you hope someone will stay without asking you to kneel. And she didn't know what to do with that. She wanted the altar, not the offering. And now, you are bleeding before a God who cannot hear you. But this is not her fault. You must stop searching for villains in the ruins. There are none. Only mirrors. Only symbols of what you chose to ignore. She mirrored your hunger. She mirrored your belief that love and pain must arrive in the same shape. And when you began to ask for something deeper for communion, not attention, she recoiled. Not because she is cruel, but because she is afraid too. Afraid of being seen beyond the performance. Afraid of the terrible vulnerability that comes when two souls meet without masks. You linger because of the moments, the small silences when her eyes soften, the accidental intimacy of a hand resting near yours. You think these fragments are evidence. You think they mean she understands, that she might return to that early, wild hunger. But they are not signals. They are echoes, ghosts of something neither of you knew how to keep. You are trying to resurrect the living from the dead. And every time you succeed, every time she touches you with that flicker of awe, it fades, faster than before. Because nothing sacred can be manufactured. You ask yourself, what if she changes? What if she sees you again? But love that must be earned is not love. And a man who waits to be recognized is a man who has already abandoned his path. You cannot build a temple on conditions. You cannot beg for fire in a room that worships safety. She wants to love you, but she wants to love the idea of you, the one who smiles but doesn't speak, who holds her but never confesses, who listens without asking to be held. You became real, and reality is too wild for her mythology. So now you live between lives, not quite here, not quite gone. You perform detachment. You wear your sadness like armor. She notices, she senses the distance, and sometimes she panics. She offers sweetness, softness, even sex, not out of love, but out of survival. Because she can feel your footsteps forming in the silence. And the truth terrifies her. Not because she loves you, but because she hates to lose the version of herself she sees when you stay. There is no betrayal in leaving. The betrayal already happened the moment you silenced your inner voice for the sake of keeping peace. The moment you accepted half love and called it destiny. The moment you kissed her not out of fire, but out of obligation. That is where the fall began. Not in the leaving, but in the staying long after your soul had already begun to rot. She will cry, perhaps, or maybe not. Maybe she will only blink, calmly, as if she had already rehearsed this ending. You are not the first man to walk, you are not the last. But what matters is not that you go. What matters is how you go. With silence, not rage. With dignity, not theater. You are not punishing her. You are retrieving yourself. You are choosing to walk not because she failed you, but because you refuse to fail yourself any longer. She will tell herself stories that you were afraid, that you were distant, that you never truly opened. Let her build the myth that allows her to sleep. That is not your burden anymore. Your only task is to step through the door and not look back. Not because you don't care, but because you do. Because to care truly is to know when your presence is a lie. And every day you stay past that knowing is a deeper betrayal than any departure. You carry nothing with you. Not the letters, not the promises, not the memories wrapped in velvet. Let them stay, let them decay. The man who walks must walk empty, or he walks in circles. And you are done circling. You are done performing. You are done waiting for someone to see what you refuse to embody. Walk. You will not be celebrated. There will be no applause, no validation, only silence. And silence, at first, will feel like death, but stay with it. Let it burn, let it strip you clean, for beneath the silence, there is something older than need, something more sacred than being loved. There is truth, and truth, unlike affection, does not tremble when you speak. This is your choice to be adored for the mask, or abandoned for the truth. One path feels warm but leads to forgetting. The other feels cold but leads home. Choose, not for her, not for the past, not for the version of you who beg to be seen, but for the one who no longer fears disappearing, the one who no longer mistakes being wanted for being worthy. She never held you. You held yourself still enough to be mistaken for a possession. Now move, not to escape, but to arrive. And when the wind greets you on the other side, do not ask for directions, just breathe. You were never lost. You were only waiting for the silence to become louder than the lie. There will be a night far from now, or perhaps tomorrow when you hear her name whispered in a hallway of your mind. You will not flinch. You will not turn. The image will come, her back turned, your hand on the open door. The silence between you stretched like skin over bone. You will remember not her, but yourself, the man who finally walked without needing to be followed. Somewhere in another life, you are still standing there, unsure, but here. Now, the night is quiet. No tears, no echo, just wind, just space, and a path that no longer curves back to her voice. You walk as if no one ever watched you, and that is how you begin.